If I ever had a shred of doubt about where I stood in my family, it vanished the day I accidentally found the will. I was at my parents' place, like I usually was every couple of weeks, helping them out with bills or errands. This time, Dad needed help scanning some paperwork, financial documents, insurance policies, things like that. I didn't mind. I'd been their unofficial tech support slash accountant slash handyman for the better part of 5 years. As I flipped through the stack of documents, one folder caught my eye: estate plan and last will and testament. I wasn't trying to snoop. I really wasn't. But my name was right there on the folder, and curiosity got the better of me. After everything I'd done for them, I figured it wouldn't hurt to know how things were structured. What I read made my stomach turn. Everything. The house. The savings. The car. All of it was going to Eric. There wasn't a single mention of me, aside from a generic sentence about loving both sons equally. That was it. No percentage, no token item, not even a line about appreciation. I was the one who paid their mortgage when they fell behind. I covered groceries more often than not. I fixed the plumbing when it broke. And Eric? He was 28, jobless, and living in the guest room playing video games all day. He hadn't lifted a finger, but somehow, he was the one inheriting everything? I was still holding the will when Dad came back into the room. "What's taking so long?" he asked casually. I didn't even try to hide the document. I looked him dead in the eye and asked, "So this is how it is?" His face went pale. "It's not what you think," he mumbled. "Really? Because it looks like you decided the one son who does everything for you gets nothing, and the one who does nothing gets everything." He started to explain but stopped. "It's complicated." Of course it was. I called out for Mom. When she walked in and saw what I was holding, her face flushed with guilt. But instead of apologizing, she went with the soft voice treatment. "Jake, honey, you don't need the inheritance. You've got a good job, a good head on your shoulders. Eric, well, he needs more help." That was it. That was their justification for cutting me out. I placed the will down slowly, breathed in deep, and said, "Good to know where I stand." Then I walked out and slammed the door behind me. I didn't return their calls. I didn't visit. I stopped paying for anything. If they wanted groceries, they could figure it out. If the mortgage came due, Eric could handle it. They made their choice. Now I was making mine. 2 weeks passed in total silence. At first, I think they thought I was bluffing, that I'd cool off, come back around, and quietly resume my role as the family safety net. That was the pattern, after all. I got angry, they played dumb, and I swallowed it. Not this time. The first sign that reality had started sinking in came via text. "Dad, property taxes are due." That was it. "No. Hey, how are you?" "No. Sorry about everything." Just a cold, clinical reminder that the bills were coming in, and, apparently, so should my wallet. I stared at the screen, equal parts amazed and disgusted. They still didn't get it. They thought I'd just pick up where I left off, no questions asked. I replied, "Pretty sure Eric's got it. Since, the house is his and all." Exactly 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Mom. I let it go to voicemail. She didn't leave one. Then the next text came through. "Mom, Jake, please don't be like this. We need to talk." Oh, now they wanted to talk. When the bills were piling up. When there was no one left to bail them out. Not when I was staring at their betrayal. Not when I was walking out that door. No. I waited an hour before replying. "There's nothing to talk about. You made your choice. Now live with it." I thought that might be the end of it for the day. I'd made myself crystal clear. But then Eric decided to chime in. "Eric, dude, stop being a drama queen. It's not a big deal. Just help them out like you always do." I laughed, an ugly, hollow sound. Not a big deal? Of course it wasn't to him. He was still basking in the comfort of knowing everything was going to be handed to him. I replied, "You've got it covered. You're the favorite, after all." "Eric, OMG, are you seriously mad about the will? Grow up, man. It's just money." That one got under my skin. Just money. The same money he didn't earn, didn't contribute to, but had no problem inheriting. That hypocrisy hit like a punch. Me, then you won't mind using some of that money to cover the mortgage, right? Silence. A few minutes passed before another text arrived, from Mom this time. She was upping the guilt trip. "Mom, Jake, we're your parents. Family takes care of each other. We did so much for you growing up, and now you're abandoning us." Abandoning them. That word. It hit something deep. I typed back slowly, with the kind of calm that only burns hotter under the surface. "You made it clear I wasn't part of the family when you left me out of the will. Eric can take care of you now. I could almost see her clutching her pearls through the screen. She always had a flair for the dramatic. Then came Dad's final move for the night. Dad, we're not asking for much. Just enough to cover a few months of mortgage until we figure things out. Don't be selfish. Selfish. I had sacrificed years of my own financial security to keep their lives stable. And now, I was selfish? I clenched my jaw and typed back the last message of the night. No, I'm done. Then I shut off my phone. I thought turning off my phone would give me some peace. And for a few hours, it did. But the next morning, I woke up to something that made my stomach twist. A notification from my banking app, a request for money. $3,500. From my mother. No message. No explanation. Just a digital demand like I was a loan app with instant payout. I stared at it, blinking in disbelief. They didn't even have the decency to ask me. They just assumed I'd cave. I declined the request. Not even 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Mom. Again. Ignored. Then came the text. Jake, I know you saw the request. Why did you decline it? Why? Because this wasn't my problem anymore. Because they made their decision the second they locked me out of the will. Because I had spent enough years being responsible for people who didn't think I deserved a place in their future. I replied. Because it's not my responsibility. Try Eric. Another call. Declined again. Another text. We're going to lose the house if you don't help us. That's when the manipulation really kicked in. The same people who once told me I didn't need anything because I had my life together were now dangling catastrophe like bait. I typed slowly, deliberately. Maybe you should have thought about that before deciding I didn't matter. I set my phone down, hands shaking not from guilt, but from sheer disbelief at how brazen they were being. Then came the one that pushed me past the edge. Dad, you're really going to let your parents become homeless? Well, I actually laughed. Out loud. The gall. These people weren't on the brink of homelessness. They were just finally being forced to manage their lives without the person they used as a crutch. They had savings. They had options. What they didn't have was me. And that's what scared them. I ignored the rest of their attempts throughout the day. But later that night, just when I thought it might finally die down, I got another message. This time from Eric. Eric, dude, just send them the money already. You're making this a bigger deal than it is. The audacity of this guy. He still had the nerve to act like I was the one being unreasonable. I'd hit my limit. Me. You mean the same money you're inheriting? Why don't you send it? His reply came fast. Eric, you know I don't have that kind of cash right now. Right. Of course he didn't. He'd never had that kind of cash. Because he'd never earned it. Me. Guess you better figure it out then, bro. You're the one they chose. No reply. And for the first time in a long time, I went to bed with something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. It wasn't satisfaction. It wasn't closure. But it was peace. The quiet that comes from not being manipulated, not being guilt-tripped, not being used. But peace, as I was about to learn, never lasts long in this family. Because the next day, everything escalated. It was around 2 p.m. when the front desk at my apartment building called. Hey, Jake. Your parents are here. My blood ran cold. What? They're downstairs. Said it's an emergency. They've been trying to reach you. I squeezed my eyes shut. They actually showed up. I'm not expecting them, I said quickly. Please don't let them up. There was a pause. They're being kind of pushy. Tell them to leave. Now. I hung up, my heart racing, and stared at the door like it might burst open any second. Then came the first text. Mom, we're downstairs. Open the door. No question. No apology. Just another demand. Mom, again Jake, we're not leaving until you talk to us. They weren't just trying to guilt me anymore. They were cornering me. Physically. At my home. I grabbed my keys, shoved on my shoes, and stormed toward the lobby. They wanted to talk? Fine. They were going to hear me. I stormed down the hallway with fire in my chest. Every step felt heavier than the last, not from fear, but fury. They had crossed the line. Showing up at my place? Ambushing me like I owed them something? That wasn't love. That wasn't family. That was control. As the elevator doors opened and I stepped into the lobby, I spotted them immediately. Mom stood front and center, arms crossed, eyes red like she'd been rehearsing her guilt trip on the drive over. Dad loomed behind her, stiff posture, jaw set. And Eric? He was off to the side, staring at the floor like he was being dragged along against his will, which, knowing him, he probably was. I didn't break stride. I walked right up to them and stopped just short of the glass doors. Mom's eyes lit up the second she saw me. Jake. Finally. We need to talk. I didn't open the door. I didn't smile. I just crossed my arms and looked at her with the same blank expression I'd practiced in the mirror for months. No, I said. You need to leave. She blinked like I'd spoken a foreign language. Excuse me. You heard me. Dad stepped forward. You're really going to stand there and let us lose our home over a grudge? That made me laugh, sharp and bitter. A grudge? You mean the decision where you wrote me out of your will? Or the years I paid your bills while Eric played video games? Eric finally looked up. Look, man, I didn't ask for her. I shut him down with a glare. Don't. Just don't. Mom pressed a hand to her chest like I'd physically wounded her. We only did what we thought was best for the family. No, I said firmly. You did what was best for Eric. Be honest about that. Silence. Heavy. Awkward. Dad shifted, clearly uncomfortable. Jake, we raised you. We gave you everything. The least you can do, I stepped closer, voice dropping. I gave you everything. And you repaid me with erasure. Eric muttered, Jesus, man. Chill. I snapped toward him. You want the house? Pay the bills. You want the legacy? Earn it. I'm not your safety net. The building's security guard started walking over, probably sensing the tension from across the room. I nodded at him through the glass and mouthed, I'm okay, just as Mom's voice rose. Jake, he's your brother. I didn't flinch. Yeah, and I've supported him more than you ever have. She opened her mouth again, but I held up a hand. No more. This ends here. You don't show up at my home. You don't text me for money. You don't guilt me over decisions you made. Dad's face tightened. We thought you'd be mature about this. Mature? I laughed again. You mean silent and obedient? That's not maturity. That's compliance. Eric groaned. Why are you making this so dramatic? I stared him down. Because it is dramatic. You inherited a house. I inherited silence. And now you're mad because I'm not sticking around to bail you out? Grow up. Mom looked like she might cry. Dad looked ready to explode. Eric just looked bored. But I felt calm. For once. We're family, Mom whispered. We take care of each other. I met her eyes. Exactly. So why didn't you take care of me? Silence again. No response. I gave one last look to all three of them and said the words I should have said years ago. We're done. Then I turned around and walked away. Back through the lobby. Back into the elevator. Back to my life. Later that night, I started wondering if they'd try something else, some stunt, some smear campaign, some desperate public grab for sympathy. And I realized I needed to be ready. It didn't take long for them to pivot from guilt to slander. The next morning, I logged into Facebook. A mistake, maybe, but I needed to know. The first thing I saw was a vague post from my mom. One of those family is supposed to be forever types, dripping with just enough sadness and ambiguity to make her look like a martyr. No names, of course. Just enough breadcrumbs for her circle of lifelong friends and gossipy church ladies to start commenting things like, "You're such a strong mother," and "They'll come around eventually, sweetie." Then came my dad. Less subtle. He shared some quote image about how true sons never forget the sacrifices of their parents. Tagged me directly. That little move sparked a wave of comments. Some of their friends I hadn't seen since I was a teenager piled on with things like, "Shame on whoever would abandon their family like that." One even wrote, "Hope he never needs you the way you need him now." I stared at the screen, part stunned, part impressed. They weren't even trying to hide it. I had dared to stand up for myself, and now they were rallying an army of public pity to paint me as the heartless son who left his poor, aging parents out in the cold. Eric's post was the cherry on top. A selfie with him, and my mom captioned, "Some of us still know what loyalty looks like." Loyalty? That man hadn't been loyal to a job, a bill, or a toothbrush in years. And yet, he was already basking in the glow of online sympathy like a victim of war. I took a breath and locked my phone. My pulse was racing, but I didn't feel scared. I felt ready. I had seen this coming. I'd already drafted a post of my own the night before, just in case. Not to attack, not to start a war, but to make sure the truth didn't get buried beneath their fiction. I opened my laptop, logged in, and pulled it up. It wasn't long. Just a calm, detailed post explaining the facts. No rage, no drama, just reality. I spoke about years of paying their bills, supporting them while Eric sat idle, and how I was excluded from the will despite being the only one who kept the lights on. I didn't mention names, but I didn't sugarcoat it either. Then I hit post. The silence after that was surreal. A few likes at first. Then private messages, Some from old classmates, cousins, even a couple of my parents' friends. "I'm sorry," they said. I had no idea. One message from a cousin I barely knew stood out. "They've been doing this to you for years, huh? Good for you for finally walking away." The validation was weirdly emotional. Like, maybe I hadn't imagined it all. Maybe I wasn't being dramatic or ungrateful. Maybe I was just tired of being the family's punching bag. But just as I started to breathe, Eric slid into my DMs. "Wow, bro. You really airing dirty laundry online? You're disgusting." I didn't answer. I screenshotted it. I also saved copies of the posts my parents had made, just in case. Not because I planned to sue them, but because I needed a paper trail. If this went further, I didn't want it to be my word against theirs. That night, I did 3 things. Changed all my social media privacy settings. Installed a video doorbell and a new lock on my apartment door. Booked an appointment with an attorney who specialized in harassment and estate disputes. Maybe it was overkill. Or maybe I finally understood that the only way to truly separate myself from them was to treat them not as family, but as people who might become a threat. Because once someone tries to burn your character just to protect their entitlement, the rules change. I didn't sleep much the night after I posted my side of the story. Not because I regretted it, quite the opposite, but because my brain couldn't stop cycling through every possible way this could escalate. I knew my family. They didn't just throw tantrums, they turned them into marathons. And right now, I was the finish line they were determined to cross. The next morning, I made coffee and started scanning Facebook again. Eric hadn't posted anything new yet, but he'd liked a meme someone shared that said, "Entitled kids these days think parents owe them an inheritance. What a joke." Subtle, real subtle. I took another screenshot. Then I spent the next hour archiving every interaction, comments, likes, screenshots of texts. Anything that could later be twisted into their version of the truth. It felt surreal, like I was collecting evidence against my own blood. But that's what this had come to. At 11 a.m. sharp, I walked into the office of Sylvia Myers, a family law attorney a friend had recommended. Her office smelled like expensive paper and peppermint tea. She was sharp, direct, and thankfully not surprised by any of it. "Unfortunately, this kind of generational financial manipulation is more common than you think," she said as she flipped through the folder I handed her. I explained everything. The will. The financial history. The ambush at my apartment. The sudden flood of online posts meant to smear me in public. She nodded and took notes. By the end of our meeting, she said something that stuck with me. "You're not just cutting them off financially, you're dismantling a power structure. That never goes quietly." We discussed my options. A cease and desist letter if they continued the public posts. A no-contact order if they showed up again. And in a worst-case scenario, evidence for a harassment case if Eric or my parents tried to retaliate beyond social media. I left her office feeling equal parts sick and relieved. Sick that it had come to this. Relieved that I wasn't crazy to take it seriously. Back at home, I lit a candle and sat with my journal, the one I hadn't touched in weeks. I wrote everything down. The confrontation. The Facebook drama. The meeting with Sylvia. It felt important to keep a record, not just for legal purposes but for me. Something about seeing the words in ink made it more real, more survivable. Then I called Jamie, my old college friend who'd once told me, "You can choose your family. Blood isn't the contract it used to be." We hadn't talked much recently, but I needed to hear a familiar voice that didn't carry guilt like a weapon. We talked for 2 hours. About life. Work. What I was going through. And not once did Jamie say, "Well, they're still your parents." He just listened. Supported. Told me I wasn't wrong for choosing peace. After the call, I sat down at my laptop again. Not for doom scrolling this time, but to draft something new. A blog post. Not a call-out or some vengeance-fueled manifesto. Just a reflection. About boundaries. About choosing self-respect over tradition. About the quiet strength it takes to walk away from people who raised you when they no longer treat you with dignity. I wasn't ready to publish it yet, but it was a start. By the time the weekend rolled around, I had built a digital wall around myself. I blocked, filtered, and muted anything that even resembled my family's drama. I created folders for screenshots, renamed everything with timestamps, and even encrypted a backup. I wasn't being paranoid. I was being prepared. And thank God I was, because Monday morning I got an email that shook me. It wasn't from my parents or Eric. It was from a local news blogger, one of those semi-professional community truth-tellers with a following just big enough to cause problems. The subject line, "Care to comment on your family's recent claims?" I clicked with a sinking feeling. The message was short but cutting. Jake, I've been contacted by someone claiming you abandoned your aging parents and are refusing to support them in their time of need. I'd like to give you a chance to share your side before I run the piece. I closed the laptop and just sat still. It had come to this. They were actually trying to shame me in public media. I felt a storm rising in my chest, but this time, I didn't let it take over. Instead, I called Sylvia, my lawyer. She asked for a copy of the email, told me not to reply, and said she'd handle it. If they drag you into public mud, they risk exposure themselves, she warned. We have receipts. And unlike them, you've acted in good faith. I hung up and opened the blog post I'd been writing. Suddenly, it felt more necessary than ever, not just to defend myself, but to reclaim the narrative. It wasn't about venting anymore. It was about standing up for myself and for anyone who's ever been guilted into silence by the people who were supposed to love them. I revised the post, removed the emotional clutter, and replaced it with clarity. I shared my story without bitterness, just truth, the years of sacrifices, the dismissal in the will, the final decision to walk away. I hit publish. Then I turned off my notifications, poured myself a drink, and called Jamie. They tried to get a blogger involved, I said. Jamie cursed under his breath and then told me something that stuck. That's desperation. You're winning. For the first time in weeks, I laughed. A real, steady laugh. Because he was right. I wasn't hiding anymore. I wasn't begging for recognition. I was living my truth, and they couldn't touch that. By Tuesday morning, the blog post had gained unexpected traction. Comments poured in, some from strangers who saw themselves in my words, others from mutual friends who now saw the situation clearly. There were a few trolls, of course, people who called me ungrateful or soft. But they were drowned out by the people who said, "Thank you." I thought I was alone. I didn't respond to any of them. I didn't need to. The words were already doing their job. Sylvia, my attorney, called later that afternoon. The local blogger had backed off, said he didn't want to get caught in family drama with receipts. Smart move. We agreed to sit on the cease and desist unless anything escalated. But something told me it wouldn't. My parents had overplayed their hand, and now they were quiet. Even Eric had gone dark. I found myself walking more that week. No headphones, no phone calls. Just long, quiet walks to feel the city under my feet. For the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for the next demand or guilt trip. I was just here. Jamie and I grabbed dinner that Friday. Halfway through my burger, he asked, "You think you'll ever talk to them again?" I chewed carefully. Swallowed. "Maybe," I said, "but not out of obligation. Only if it ever feels safe. Mutual. Human." He nodded. Fair. That night, I started drafting the second post. Not about betrayal or money or wills, but about recovery. About the life that begins after you stop begging for a place in someone else's version of family. I wasn't sure when I'd publish it, or if I'd ever need to. But writing it felt like closing a door that had been left open too long. Before bed, I looked at the final message my dad had ever sent me, the one calling me selfish, a disappointment. I didn't feel anything when I saw it now. Not anger. Not sadness. Just distance. The kind that isn't cold, but clean. I deleted the message. Not out of spite. Out of peace. Sometimes, letting go isn't an act of revenge. It's an act of liberation.